What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sidelined. I'm Brooke Fletcher. That's my girl, Dani K. Dani, how we doing?
Doing well. Brooke, I dyed my hair this week. You probably can't tell because the lights are on it, but I'm a little bit more brunette, which must mean that I'm getting smarter.
Can we talk about what made you want to dye your hair brunette? It looks so good, by the way.
Thank you. You're so sweet. I was just spending so much money on trying to continue to be blonde. I think somewhere as I aged, the lightness to my hair decided to leave the building. So therefore I was getting my hair highlighted every 6 weeks. Not only was that extremely expensive, but it was breaking my hair. So we're trying a little bit more natural look here. It was a little shocking the first day. I'm wondering if I'm supposed to like adopt a new personality or something like that. Like I tried listening to emo music because I'm being dramatic and acting like I have dark black hair.
Think about brunettes that we just listen to emo music.
It was like, I can't be a Barbie girl any longer.
Yeah. That's hilarious. So when you texted me that you were like, sorry, I just dyed my hair brown. I was like, wait, what? And you said the picture. I'm like, oh my gosh, you actually did dye your hair brown. And it looks so good on you. It looks so good.
I appreciate it. It's not as dark as my brain thinks it is, but it's really growing on me. I like it. I've gotten good feedback, which is always nice, right? If other people are telling you that it looks good. So maybe this is the more mature. I turned 34 in a few days. Maybe this is the more mature Dani. She's a little less platinum blonde.
It's fun to experiment, try different things, you know?
Totally. But Brooke, you've had a very, very busy day. You are literally coming to us straight off of being a sideline reporter for the White Sox game. But the more exciting part, or at least I think it's more exciting, is the White Sox played the Padres and your husband is on the Padres. So you were the sideline reporter for a game that your husband was playing in. What was that like?
Yeah, they did play the Padres today. It was funny because he told me a few days ago and he's like, hey, I'm scheduled to play on this game. Like, are you okay with that? And he's like, I'm only in for a few at bats. And I said, yeah, that's fine. I go, I'm not talking to you though. He goes, why? And I was like, because we're professional here. Okay. I can't talk to you. So it was funny. I walked, one of the players came up to me on the White Sox was like, remember who writes your checks. Okay. Like jokingly, I'm like, don't worry now. But it was funny. Yeah, I saw him for a few at-bats and then he went home. He beat me home. But it's been fun. Spring training has been so great. Everybody at the White Sox has been so welcoming. We talked about this, but yeah, it's also nice to get some sunshine and be closer on the West Coast, Dani, more familiar with your kind of weather here.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, Arizona is beautiful and there's so much to do, so much good food, but this time of year, especially sunsets and everything are absolutely stunning.
I'm so locked in to like right before I do my opening hit and I'm just making sure like I'm good and I'm in like the right headspace and he actually, when I got home, he goes, I was actually going to come and say hi to you, but you were just like in the zone, you know, you didn't want to talk to anybody. So I just let you be. So
that's pretty funny. Okay, wow. Good job, Jake. Let her be professional. Good for you.
You know, we got work to do. He's got a job. I got a job. And, you know, then we'll do our thing. But I'm so excited, Dani, because we have another guest on today's show. And it's somebody that we know very well.
Yes, it's one of our closest friends, 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗹 𝗟𝗶. He was a linebacker. He played college football at Ohio State. Won a national championship with Ohio State. Then was drafted in the NFL by the Chargers back in the 2016 draft. And now he's worked with both Brooke and I as a broadcaster. He's on NBC Sports college football coverage as well. So he does it all. And he's also very well-rounded. So we're so excited. 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗹 is joining us. Yay.
Well, hello, Joshua. Thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate y'all having me. Very excited, actually, to do this one. You guys are two of my favorite people that I've ever worked with. I think this show is a lot of fun. Can't wait to talk about all the topics here.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. You know, what has it been like to work with Brooke and I? Because I'm curious, like, can you give like a little bit of like a background on what it's like to work with two women that have big opinions?
Yeah, opinions is a great place to start. I'll start with Dani since you asked the question. You don't need a mug of coffee coming into the office if you're working with Dani on a show because the energy is going to be there. But this is an energetic profession, right? Like you got to bring it every day. So I always appreciated that. In terms of opinions, I feel like when we were on shows together, we would go back and forth. I'm as stubborn as can be. I'm a Taurus. It's my nature. Dani, like you are never going to back down off of an opinion. I certainly appreciate that. And then Brooke, you and I worked together just about every day for a while. And it was a ton of fun. Brooke is like very pragmatic, like, wants to see all the sides of the different things, like very fun to work with from that perspective. But like two people who I felt like made me better at my craft, just from the standpoint of when you work with high quality people, you have to be on top of your stuff too. So there was never a day I could come into the office when I was on a show with either one of you and feel like I didn't have to bring my 100% because you get exposed doing that.
Well, that's so sweet.
Nice. Right? We thought you were spilling the tea.
I was not expecting that. I thought I was setting us up to get roasted, and he was so nice. I promise I wasn't asking for a compliment.
I can't come on your show and start roasting. That would be so rude. I'm not a rude guy like that.
It would be like in your whole like thing though to come on our show and roast us because you do like to do it from time to time.
There's a little pettiness, petty Perry.
Yeah, petty Perry. Certainly it's going to come up at some point. But I'm excited to have you talk to us about, or at least have a conversation with us about a bunch of the hot topics, especially in football. With your background in football, I feel like this is a privilege that we get to pick your brain about a lot of these things. And obviously the combine is happening in Indy. I've been to the combine as a reporter, but obviously never as a player. So it's going to be kind of fun to see your perspective of it all. What was your combine experience like?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could go back as a media personality now and see it from the other perspective. It was a whirlwind as a player. And for folks who don't know, it's 2-3 days that you're there in Indianapolis and it's all business and you're trying to cram so many different things into a very short time frame. So when you land in Indianapolis, you're coming from a training facility, more than likely. They take you right from the airport over to the hospital. And the first thing that they want to do is get medical scans on you. It's not necessarily a medical evaluation. They just want to get all the different information. For me, that was hell because there was an abnormality that showed up on one of the scans in my knee that ended up being nothing, but I had to spend hours at this hospital and they were taking me from room to room, seeing different doctors, getting different types of looks at this knee. But everybody starts there. Then you go through throughout the process. There's a drug test that happens early in the morning, 4 a.m. They're knocking on your door, asking for a sample. All the guys lined up in a hallway to go into the same bathroom. That's crazy. Then you go for medical evals where they put you up on the tables. The doctors are tugging on all of your arms, your legs, your ankles, knees, everything, trying to figure out what exactly is wrong with you. They have a detailed medical history and they want to see if you're a guy who's coming in, are you damaged goods or are you good to go? If we're going to invest millions into a player, we have to be certain that they can perform. And then, of course, there's the on field that everybody sees where you're running 40s, you're doing vertical jump, broad jump, you're doing on-field drills. All of that stuff is for show. The behind the scenes of the meetings is probably the most important part, and that's where the real work is done. There's a lot of preparation that goes into that beforehand because part of it is the schematics. How well do you know football? Can you dictate what certain coverages do as a defensive player, what they mean, what your job is, what other people's jobs are, how offenses would like to attack? Then there's the other part of, again, we're investing millions of dollars. Are you a good guy? Can we trust you? Do you have good character? Have you been in trouble in the past? And they'll ask you tough questions about that. And so think about all those different things and all of the places your mind has to be, how physically ready you have to be to perform. And you're dropped into Indianapolis like an alien. It's probably 20 degrees when you get there. And it's like go time for the biggest job interview you could ever have.
I mean, the stress that you must have felt because you're trying to make sure you're physically, at your best and also mentally. But then, as soon as you walk in, everybody is just staring at you. I kind of felt like that in beauty pageants in a way. You have to be on, for a whole week and you have to be at your very best because everybody is trying, like you mentioned, the character aspect. They're trying to see like, how are you going to react? How do you treat everybody else? It's like, I can only imagine how overwhelming it must have felt for you.
It's a little bit archaic in ways when you break it down, right? Like you mentioned it, but it's basically a meat market, and there's a part of that process where you're parading around in your underwear. You know, you've done the pageant thing before. Like there's eyes on you in ways that are uncomfortable.
Like, eyes up here, buddy.
The wildest setup I've ever seen. And Joshua, this is exactly what I wanted to talk to you about, because I've never seen anything
like there for all that. Like, you were there for that part.
So basically, my pass, because I worked for the team, I could sneak through the room to get from point A to B. No, I'm not technically supposed to be in there, but somehow I ended up in there, and it was by accident. But when I saw it, I'm not kidding you, it was a dark, dark room. Think of like an atrium. Okay, so like a huge room. And there's all these bleachers that are in a circle. Okay, these bleachers are lit up with something in the center, and that's where the player gets called out. And they stand in the center of the room in their underwear, with all the coaches and scouts sitting there watching them as if they're in a circus ring. Yeah. And they start calling out their measurements, and they're weighing them, they're calling out their measurements. It's literally like the highest bidder gets the prize.
No, seriously, you're standing. No, it's crazy. You're standing there, and to your point, like everybody's watching. Somebody comes out with the tape measure. We're gonna get your arm length, then we're gonna get your wingspan. We're gonna get your hand. We're gonna get height. We're gonna get weight. And every measurement they take, they're shouting it out. And sometimes for guys where there are questions, you know, this guy maybe looked like he was a little bit sloppy in terms of his physical fitness in college. How did he train? Did he come? You hear oohs and ahs when they hear numbers that they like in terms of measurements. It is a very strange place. No.
People don't talk about this. Like, I was just assuming that, I'm sure you had to line up at some point, but like the way that Dani described it, I'm thinking like the Hunger Games, a spotlight, everybody is just staring at you like you're a piece of meat, and they're like, all right, next, you know,
and their measurements are announced over a speaker system. Like I imagine, just because I was watching, you know, all those Yellowstone shows, like where they are talking about the different horses that are for sale. It was literally like that. Like, it didn't matter what size you are. You're just standing there in your underwear in front of all these guys. Very strange. There's
some nerdy dude from somebody's front office who's sitting there like pushing his glasses up and writing it down on a notepad. And it's a part of the process. So I don't know if it's necessarily like a necessary evil anymore. Like, you can do this in a different way, but it's the way that it has been done. And I think the environment's set up in a way where it's supposed to be stressful. I think you're supposed to feel uncomfortable when you walk in there, because part of this evaluation is, how do you perform under stress? How do you perform under pressure? Can you rise to the occasion, or do you crack? There are some guys who don't perform very well at all because they can't handle all of the attention and how uncomfortable it is.
Yeah. That interview part is the part that you're talking about, right? In terms of cracking?
Well, no, I mean, every part of it. You see some guys whose on-field workouts don't look great. You see other guys who, you know, they're showing up late to different places because they can't manage their schedule. But to your point, the interview is where they get you. And I didn't have anybody ask me any crazy questions. Thankfully, I was a guy coming out of Ohio State who was known to be a character guy. I was, you know, won a Big Ten Sportsmanship Award. I was a keynote speaker at the conference media days, like just good guy, right? So like nobody was grilling me about that. I walked into one interview where they had coaches, right? Defensive coordinator, linebacker coach, the head coach was in there. They had a couple other defensive assistants, GMs in there. And all of them start asking me questions at the same time. So one guy starts into a question, and then another guy will start into a question, and then another guy will start into a question. And part of this is, can you process the information? And the other part of it is, are you showing favoritism? Like, do you think that the GM's opinion is more important? Are you just answering the GM, or are you only answering the defensive coordinator and not the head coach or the linebacker coach? And there's not a right or wrong answer necessarily, but they're making an evaluation based off of how you handle it.
The mind games that the manipulation.
That's what it is.
Right. I mean, and how do you not overthink when you're in there and you like walk out and you're like, crap, should I have like paid more attention to the GM? But then I was looking at these guys over here. Like, what is the right thing to do in that moment?
And it's so funny because you see dudes walking out of the meetings and they're on the phone talking to their agent like, oh man, I definitely bombed that one. I'm not getting drafted by this team. It's like, you know, everything feels so urgent in the moment. But the funny thing that you realize when you get away from that is that certainly the interview process matters. And when you're a guy who's got questions about, football IQ or character, like that is super important. But a lot of these teams are just trying to check boxes. They've done so much background on each of these players. They know what the weigh-in's supposed to be. They know what your physical measurements are supposed to look like. They know what the interview's supposed to feel like because they've done so much research. They're just trying to make sure nothing crazy pops up. And that's the wildest part about it is like, it matters so much, but they already know going in. So you are who you are and just go out there and do what you do.
Joshua, this is so weird. And because I hate to compare it to a beauty pageant again, or like
when I was
it's
very comparable.
I do too.
Because I mean, you guys put in so much work and the NFL is like,
well, you do too.
But it's just so everything you're saying, that's how I felt like the interview process, like you go in and, they, at that point, when you go in at Miss USA, when you go in that week, they say that like they're trying to decide and maybe they have like one or two people they're trying, but they already know like who they like, who are the front runners. And so of course you're sitting there overthinking the entire week, trying to think like, oh, well, I'm going to make a difference here and there. No, they already know. And so you're sitting there stressing yourself out all week. You're not eating, or at least I wasn't, and you're just,
some guys aren't.
Yeah. But you can't help it, obviously, because of the stress. But that's so interesting because I see so many similarities. It's stressful. It's stressful.
It is. I mean, I think it is very similar. And probably like one of the things that you would tell somebody going through the same thing that now that you've done it is just kind of got to be yourself, right? Like there's a reason you're there. And being yourself has gotten you to a point where it's like, we're in the show. And so there's only so much adapting and changing, and like you can certainly polish up, right? Like there are tweaks and being on top of your game is great, but there's no reimagining who you are at that point. Like I was what I was as a player when I walked in there. I was what I was when I walked out.
Okay, well, I actually looked up these stats for you on the combine from the on the field stuff. Okay. So yes, you were 6'4", 254 pounds at the time that this was happening. I don't know. I'm assuming you're still 6'4". I don't care how much you weigh now, but it's at an unofficial time of 4.68 on your first attempt at the 40-yard dash, and then you clocked a 4.7 flat on your second try there. Were you happy with that number or?
So I was okay with the first number, and I thought on my second one, like I'm gonna cut it loose, and I thought I could run a better one. I actually ended up tweaking my hammy, and I didn't tell anybody.
No.
Yeah, and the workout ended up being fine, but like I was pissed because I felt like I had a little bit more. At 6'4", 254, that was a good time for me.
Okay, great. And then you had a bench press. You did 225 pounds 20 times, which seems pretty impressive. Okay, I'm not bad. But how about this? Your standing broad jump, why this needs to be measured, I will never understand. 10'4", but our guy killed it. I'm just going to go with the 5th best among linebackers because that was the last article I read about it. So 5th best at the combine for your broad jump. I don't know what I'm doing to help you on the field, JP, but my goodness, you stood out.
Yeah, listen, it's one of those where it's a test of explosion, lower body explosion. I think that's what they're trying to gauge there. I was proud of that one. I was actually an all-state long jumper in high school. 2 years, I was all Ohio in the long jump. So I felt like that was one of the places where I could shine a little bit, and especially being I was one of the bigger linebackers that was there. Linebackers at 254 in 2016. Was a rarity. I don't know if there are any guys playing off-ball linebacker right now at 254. So top 5 in that category was good for me.
Before we completely wrap up the combine conversation, we can't talk about this much because we can't put too much on blast out there. But the craziest part about the combine for me has absolutely nothing to do with the players and everything to do with going out to dinner and watching these coaches and GMs essentially on spring break. It is insane. They party their tails off in Indianapolis.
Okay, so I've heard from people like not like a Super Bowl, but everybody talks about how fun the combine is from not maybe a player's perspective, but like
the
from
coaches
the outside looking
and
in.
GMs and front office staff and the scouts. I mean, sure, there's probably moments where they're locked into whatever player they're watching, but you go out to St. Elmo's, everybody's there
St.
to eat
Elmo's,
dinner,
Prime
but then there's
47.
multiple bars packed.
But
to
you're
the
not going to
brim.
dinner, are you?
No, we are not. We're
In your
locked
hotel
up.
room?
Yeah, I mean, like Exos is one of those companies that does the training. Like they'll have the basement of one of the hotels rented out to train their guys, and so like you'll go down there and get a smoothie, get a massage, whatever the case is. While we're doing that, to Danny's point, these dudes, coaches, GM, scouts, whoever, personnel guys, whoever's out there, they're going crazy. St. Elmo's packed, Harry and Izzy's packed. Prime 47 pack. Part of the reason why I want to go, I want to be in the mix. I, hobnobbing with some of the big timers out there.
You would thrive, Joshua. You would thrive around out there. Got your little dirty martini, and you're like, "What's
That's
up?
right.
Let's talk."
Yeah.
Let's talk.
Everyone, JP loves himself a martini. It's the greatest.
Yes,
I mean, you'll drink a little bit of whiskey and everything else, though. I think,
I do.
But yeah, you kind of like the stem drinks.
Well, you got to be classy, right? Like it gives a nice little flair to it. It's classic drink, dirty martini. I don't know if I've told you this, but I have this concept of a room. It's called a bourbon library. I do drink bourbon. I drink a little bit of scotch too, but leather chairs, like a cowhide rug, a little bit moody. I want to do it dark, and that'll be kind of my tasting room, and maybe can host a podcast in there in the bourbon library. But I not to go off on a tangent.
No.
I like it all when it comes to the libations.
I think that's a good idea.
Brooke has something similar. I don't think it's for bourbon though. It's probably tequila if I know Brooke.
Yeah.
I love my tequila now. But we have like a little sitting area, but it's perfect. You got the little bar right there. You just pour yourself a nice little glass after a long day, and then you just sit and chat. Joshua, that would be great for you I could see you like sitting in the chair, maybe a fire. Do you have a fireplace in there?
We do. Well, not in there, but we do have a fireplace. We can get the whole mood set up to make it a nice conversational spot.
Yeah. That'd be great for you.
Conversation over cocktails. That's what we'll just say is what's happening with all those scouts and coaches and GMs. That all the stories I've seen and heard from the combine are just from casual conversations over a cocktail. And on that note, let's go from the college players that are trying to make it to the NFL to actual college campuses, because spring games are about to be starting, which, JP, do you remember your spring game?
Yeah. So my freshman year, I was completely out of it. I enrolled early. So that was my first spring. I was 17 years old, had no idea what the hell was going on. That wasn't a great one for me. The next year we did it in Cincinnati because they were doing some renovations in Ohio Stadium. That was a pretty cool trip that we took. The spring games were always fun for us because it was like a great way to get fans in and to have a little showcase during that time of the year. If anybody follows college football and sees what the ticket prices are like, it's really difficult to get into some of these big stadiums, historic venues for good teams because the get-in prices are so high. And for the spring games, $5 tickets, there would be a lot of children there, families. And that was the fun part for us, was just to be able to showcase in front of fans. And a lot of times fans who don't get to come to games in the fall.
As far as like on the field though, do you feel like as a player, it really benefited you? Because I feel like that's where a lot of people are criticizing these schools right now, is because, is it really good for the players?
It's good for young players to get the feel of being in a game. It's a controlled environment, but you're going, calling plays live and going up and down the field, getting the mechanics of subbing people in and out. And in a situation where there is an official out there, there's probably a play clock. I think that's all positive. As a young player, it really does make a difference. The older I got, the less the spring games mattered. And I was a starter, we go in there, we play a couple series. We didn't really run anything fancy and they pull us out.
But a spring game, for those that are unfamiliar and maybe don't follow college football all that much, it's essentially a scrimmage. Is that how you would, a scrimmage in the spring after a couple practices and the fans get to come? Is that just the basic way to put a spring game?
100%. So 15 practices you're allowed in the spring. So there's season ends, you go into your off-season training, then you get back on the field and you're allowed 15 practices. And usually the 15th one is what people do for their spring game. And it's a scrimmage. So some teams will break it up and they'll draft teams. So they'll look at their roster of, 120 guys and they'll break them up and they'll have their offense and defense for one team, offense and defense for another. Some schools like to go their offense versus their defense. So the defense is all one team, the offense is all another, but it's just your guys. It's a scrimmage, controlled environment. Coaches love to put stakes on the game. When we played, the losers had to walk from Ohio Stadium back to the facility, and it wasn't close. And there was like legit traffic in the streets. Like you'd get hit by a car on this walk back. And then we would have a cookout afterwards, and they'd have families in there. Some former players would come. The winners ate steaks and the losers ate beans and franks, right? And so like they try to make this thing as competitive as possible. And sometimes it is, because guys can win jobs or lose jobs based off of how they perform in the spring. So there is something to it, but it's not the end all be all.
But Brooke, there's controversy, right?
Yeah, there's controversy. And because now you have schools coming out because of NIL, the transfer portal. And, now people are worried that, they're going to recruit kids and they're going to transfer out. And so, Matt Rule, I feel, Joshua, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like he was kind of at the forefront, and then other schools started following suit. I feel like indifferent, because I understand there needs to be regulation, and maybe this is a way these schools can strong arm the NCAA, or just to create some regulation and some boundaries, because it has gotten out of hand. But it is unfortunate, because to your point that you were saying, I remember covering the spring games. It was a great opportunity for some of these, walk-ons, which you're not going to see as much anymore, or guys that weren't getting enough attention that, could put themselves on the map and put themselves on the coach's radar. There's so many interviews I do in the fall, and they're like, that guy had a great spring. I'm excited to see what he can do this fall. That's what the spring game is for these players. And so I'm curious your thoughts, Joshua, now that schools are starting to back out on these spring games. Do you agree with it?
It's tough. I think Matt Rule has actually he's a Nebraska head coach. He's been on the forefront of a lot of the issues in the changing landscape of college football. And Brooke, you mentioned some of these issues, but name, image, and likeness, and I can dive into that a little bit later, but basically how players are now allowed to monetize who they are, from what they do on the field to endorsements. That's become something different that people have had to navigate. Transfer portal, which is where players can leave one school and go to another. And there is no regulation around this. We see people who transfer multiple times with no penalty. There was a player who transferred from Wisconsin to Miami without actually getting into the portal, which is something that's never been done before in the history of college football. So he's done a good job of talking.
Explain that more. Because typically what happens, you have to say that you're going to leave a school and you want to transfer, and your name goes into this portal. Right. And that's how other
teams be recruited out of the portal. Yes.
So if he's not entered into the portal, does that mean that someone, because the rules have changed so much, does that mean someone illegally?
Yes.
Tampering.
You're tampering. Yeah. Yes. I mean, for lack of a better term, it's crazy to talk about college and tampering, but I guess that's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. So this kid from Wisconsin had signed a name, image, and likeness deal with the collective. And so what collectives do essentially is they raise money and then they allocate it to spend on the rosters so they can get players, retain players. So he signed a deal to be on Wisconsin's roster essentially. And Miami comes in and offers him more money. And Wisconsin they did not allow him to get into the portal. They said, you have made a commitment to us. It was a 2-year commitment that he made. We're not going to sign off on the paperwork to enter you into the portal. And he said, screw that, and withdrew from Wisconsin and enrolled at Miami and is now part of that football team. And there's nobody who is policing any of this. There's no enforcement of any of the rules. And that's where the coaches are getting frustrated.
Well, that's what I don't understand was like, my thought is, did the NCAA know that this was going to backfire? I feel like they did. And they were like, you guys are going to come crying to us. But I don't even think the NCAA, like, what power do they really have? And now you have, conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten, where they're just flexing, their muscles. And now they're kind of coming, rising while everybody else is still like way down here.
Yeah, no, I'm totally there with you. I think that the NCAA probably wanted to create some chaos to try to prove how important they were. And what's going to happen is instead of the NCAA, which has been the enforcement, the rules, all the different things, the facilitator of collegiate athletics, that's probably going to go back to the individual conferences now. And so the Big Ten will set and enforce its rules, and the SEC, Southeastern Conference, will set and enforce its rules, and so on and so forth. And it's chaotic. But to answer your question about these spring games real quick, I don't disagree with anybody who says I'm not going to let another team have an opportunity to tamper with my roster by showcasing them. And Brooke, as you know, as I know, Dani, you know this as well, these spring games are on national television. Fox broadcasted Ohio State and Michigan spring games last year. Like they're spectacles that have grown from the time that I was in school. Coaches don't want that opportunity to happen. Here's the other thing. For a school like Ohio State, they're doing a spring showcase this year. Don't know what the hell that means, but they had a really long season. They played into January. January 20th was their final game of the national championship. They're saying that they need a little bit more runway and they don't want to go out there and do a regular spring game. I'm kind of fine with that as well. There are a lot of reasons why you wouldn't do it. It's just unfortunate for fans.
So what is the showcase going to entail?
I have no idea. I wish I knew. I've been asking people. I don't think they know quite yet what the showcase is going to look like.
It'll be an entertainment thing where a wide receiver kicks a field goal or something like where it's like entertaining. I have no idea. Just throwing.
I think
tricks.
There's going to be some of that. I think they'll probably let the young guys, scrimmage for a little bit, but veteran players, they'll probably hold out, do some fan engagement. Here's the opportunity that I think for many of these spring games, this is a huge chance to raise funds for name, image, and likeness, right? This is a chance to get some more money into your program.
That's true.
Okay. We keep talking about NIL. That's name, image, and likeness that JP keeps referring to. NIL sort of sprung up on the scene like not too many years ago. This is still something that's
3 or 4 years ago.
It's very confusing. There's not a whole lot of guidelines to it. So if you could just what exactly is NIL and why are people freaking out about it? If you could do that, if you had to dumb that all down into 30 seconds, what is it?
Explain it like we're 5.
I can do this. Name, image, and likeness. It's that simple. You can monetize now as a collegiate athlete your name, your image, and your likeness. When I played, Dani, back in the day, when you were hooping, the university owned the rights to your name, image, and likeness. So they could put you, up in the facility, up on the stadium, on billboards, and whatever revenue came from that was for the university. Now, as a player, they have taken back that ownership. So what does that mean? You can show up and you can do autographs. You can do endorsement deals, brand deals on social media. We saw it with Ohio State, my alma mater. A bunch of guys got in trouble for trading some of their gear for tattoos. Jeremiah Smith, who was an all-everything freshman wide receiver for Ohio State, after the season, went and signed some autographs and got a free tattoo, and he's allowed to do that now. He's allowed to do that. What name, image, and likeness was not supposed to be is this pay-for-play environment that we're seeing where guys get into the transfer portal and they go to the highest bidder, where high school recruits are saying, I need $5,000 to come on a visit, and if you want me to commit, you need to tell me what the financial package is supposed to be. That was never what name, image, and likeness was. That is pay-for-play, which has always and is still illegal. The issue now and why everybody's up in arms is the waters are muddy and nobody is enforcing the rules, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously I look at it a little bit more as a basketball perspective. And I've actually talked to several basketball coaches about this because I played at a mid-major, which obviously means not a Power 5 conference, but still a Division I school. And we had the same types of resources and nice locker rooms and such like any other Power 5 school had. Now, the difference is we don't have as many high-paying donors, right? And that's where you're starting to get a huge difference now with NIL. You've got these smaller mid-major schools that can pay maybe their best player on their team basketball wise, $25,000. They can offer them $25,000. But then if that player say I go and I'm the best player on the team as a freshman and I make 25 grand. Well, now University of Washington or somewhere in a Power 5 school saw that I played really well. Now you can transfer there and they may give you $150,000.
Yep.
And like, these are smaller numbers compared to what you're seeing with college football. Obviously the numbers continue to balloon and balloon and balloon, and it's
ridiculous,
unthinkable, but it does make a huge disparity now between these top schools and these mid-majors. You're going to see less upsets. You're going to see a whole lot less like quality talent at some of these smaller schools because the better talent just has to go financially where they're going to get some money.
And that's where go ahead.
Go ahead. You got it.
No, but I'm just saying the mid-major, but and like we talk about it, the ACC, like even in the Power Four conferences, like that's ACC is making that argument where it's like they're one of the big dogs, and like we can't even keep the big players, right? We can't even keep them. So there's definitely a discrepancy, and it's like, what is the right solution, Joshua? I mean, I feel like the NIL would be getting as much backlash if the transfer portal had regulation.
Right. I think everything needs to be, it needs to be more regulated, right? Like you should be able to enforce rules of when players can transfer and how often they can transfer. This free agency of you can get into the portal every year it's a lot to handle. It's very difficult. And I feel like it's alienated fans because you can't even really get to know a guy before he's gone, which really stinks. And for NIL, there's a solution to me. Make a clearinghouse, and they're trying to do this, but every single deal, it's like doing taxes. Every dollar that you make is accounted for and can be audited. And we're talking about way more people that end up paying taxes every year than we're talking about collegiate athletes. Create a clearinghouse, make a database. Every single deal that's done has to be cleared through there, and they have the ability to rescind deals. If you see something that is out of whack, if you see a guy who is under contract for $2 million on an endorsement deal, but he only has to make 5 podcast appearances, that is not a market value deal. I'm not clearing that if I'm the person who's in charge of the clearinghouse. There are solutions to this. The problem is this is a sport of inaction, right? Collegiate sports is just a bunch of bureaucrats sitting around. NCAA people get paid a ton. Conference commissioners, all the people working in those offices, not saying they don't work very hard, but they have a way of life that's been comfortable for a long time. This has upset the apple cart. People need to be motivated toward action to try to protect the sport, protect the athletes, protect the brands of the universities, because it's getting a little chaotic out there.
It is very chaotic, and to not have any rules, and there are rules, but they're not enforced like you talked about, no policing. And it's just like a bummer. I think the transfer thing's a whole nother conversation we could spin off and have at some point. And that's just the fact that like, what if your coach is mean to you one year and then you're like, I don't want to play for that coach anymore. I'm going to transfer. It's like, if I did that, like
I played for a tyrant, by the way. My coach was real mean. I played for 𝗂𝗏. I love him to death. Like I talk to him once a week now. But he was a tyrant. We did not get along early on. And if there was a transfer portal when I was a freshman, your boy might have been in it. And I'm glad there wasn't, because that was one of the most informative decisions of my life was where I went to college and what I got to do on and off the field there. I will say this.
I am curious. Oh, keep going.
As negative as some of this conversation is and can be, when I flip on the TV on Saturdays, I feel like I'm insulated from all of it. I don't see myself talking about NIL and transfers and how the sport is going to hell in a handbasket and there's no leadership. I watch those games and I'm just thinking about the joy that the winners feel, and I'm thinking about the pain that the losers feel and what it all means in the grand scheme of chasing a championship. And so I think that's the one thing that's still right, is game day feels like game day, and they have to protect that. But as long as it feels that way, I think we can all, we can figure out a way to enjoy it.
That's good, Joshua.
It is good. And it's like a reality TV. It's like a reality TV show. No wonder we love sports so much. You get to live and die based off of the results of what's happening out there on the field, which is fun for all of us. And not fun when you're losing, that's for sure.
Well, you know how I feel about sports. I say sports is the same thing as reality TV. That's why I love both.
Which is why you love both. Okay, seriously, when I met you and you were like, I mean, our listeners need to understand Josh was a big dude. Like, he's tall, he's got a presence about him. He talks with authority. And when he comes into the office talking about the latest Real Housewives gossip, that can throw you for a loop.
It is one of my favorite things. I don't even call it a guilty pleasure anymore. I'm not guilty. It's just a pleasure. I love the Real Housewives. The Bravo celebrities are some of my favorite people in the world. You know what I caught up on? I didn't tell you before, but what I caught up on was the new season of Traitors, and it's really good so far. But they take people from like Survivor and Big Brother, and they mix them in with some of the Bravo people, Summer House and Housewives and the whole. I am loving it. But me and my wife were actually earlier today. We were watching the reunion for the Real Housewives of Potomac, and there was some drama there, and I just felt like I was in my element.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know where to start. Okay, maybe start with Traitors. Do you have a favorite character on Traitors? I'm not caught up yet, but I do love that show.
So one of the people that I'm actually rooting for now was one of the people I didn't like when I saw that they were on the show. It's Robin Dixon, who was one of the Housewives of Potomac. And I felt like she was just like one of the more annoying housewives for me. Like, her storylines were always kind of weak and like just inserting herself in drama where she didn't belong, and like was not transparent. I feel like part of getting on one of those reality shows is we see the good, we see the bad, and we see the ugly. Your husband cheating on you. Like, you need to talk about that, as uncomfortable as it is. And so I saw her on there, and I'm like, boy, I hope she gets out early. But then people were coming at her for no reason at all. And I'm like, I don't like that they're doing her like that. And so I kind of flipped teams.
I love how dedicated you are to reality TV. I remember you were actually trying to convince me to watch Traitors.
Yes.
I was like, yeah, I'm going to watch it. I didn't watch it.
Traitors is good because you have that game show mentality.
I know.
That's why I
like
it.
Love is Blind. I did watch that one season. You convinced me, and I was locked in.
The one with the girl who was uncomfy?
Yes. Which was cringeworthy.
Megan Fox?
Oh,
bless her heart. She was
bless her heart. Good Southern girl, Brooke.
Okay, did you watch this season's Love is Blind? Brooke, we gotta get you. Gotta get you
gotta get me up to speed. I'm trying to convince so I could try to get Jake to watch it with me. It was, I think it was last season.
Jake ain't trying to watch that.
This season's not it. This season's not it. Everyone looks. I'm having a hard time telling each person apart. They all look the same.
The dudes all look like they work in finance. Like picture Brooke, and that's
with blue eyes.
I think it's Minneapolis, but they all work in finance in my mind. That's not what they do.
Let's get some diversity in here. Come on.
I'm struggling. Here's my biggest struggle with that show is you can't, obviously Love is Blind. The premise is you can't see the people. And so when you're courting, you have to show the other parts of you. And so everybody's like trying to be super emotional and connect on that level. And all these people are like, they use all of the buzzwords that are out in society to talk about how sensitive they are to all these different things and what makes them so wonderful. And then naturally, they're not who they say they are. They leave the pods. They move in with this person that they never met in person.
Which is crazy.
And they have to live with them. And all of a sudden they're beefing. And just get me straight to the beef. I don't want to hear the fluff stories about, this is my family situation. I have 2 brothers and I love them so much. We're so close. And you get out the pods, you don't even talk to your brother. Like, you just lied. Like, why are we doing this?
Okay, but I will say, out of all of the reality TV shows that at least I consume, Joshua, you consume, if not more than I do. So take this for what it is. I think the most amount of lasting marriages are coming from Love is Blind.
Explain.
Because think about it. There's still a lot of people that are still married from season 1.
Which ones?
Season 1 was the most pure version, because then you had the people who wanted. It was a great season. Then you had the people who went on there because they wanted clout. They wanted to become celebrities. Actually, I know a guy who went to a high school right down the street from mine that was on one of the seasons. He was a wrestler. I've known this guy for years. And I'm not saying that he was on there because he wasn't actually looking for love, but I think part of the allure of being on there was knowing that this was going to be seen by a lot of people. And that's what happens. Flavor of Love, one of my favorite reality shows from back in the 2000s.
Flavor of Love.
You know, my parents are wonderful people, and I question why they would ever let me watch that show when it was originally airing. I watched it back on Tubi, by the way, and they got the second season uncensored.
Maybe I'll watch that. Screw Love is Blind. We're watching Flavor of Love, where we got Pumpkin in New York.
In New York, my girl.
And our girls.
Oh my God. Hoops. And then she went on to date Shaq.
No way.
Yes. And she's like, 5'4" on a good day. Shaq's all big. That was an odd couple. But as that show progressed into season 2 and season 3, you had a whole bunch of people on there who were just trying to get noticed. They were trying to get found. And I think part of the Love is Blind thing that bothers me is you got a whole bunch of phonies on there. They're just trying to get their, however many minutes of fame that they're going to get out of it.
Right. That's the problem with reality TV these days.
Yeah, because everybody
Dani, I will say this, though. Housewives is the worst show to go on if you want to have a successful marriage. To the point that you were talking about, it feels like every housewife ends up getting a divorce.
Can you explain to Brooke, because she doesn't watch any Real Housewives, and I find that to be shocking.
I have had a little taste of OC, Orange County.
Okay.
They're the original ones, right?
They are an absolute mess, and I love them.
Tamra, right?
Yep.
And Peggy. Is Peggy still even on it?
No.
Vicky?
That's how long ago it was. Peggy?
Vicky Gunvalson? Now, I'm not going to be shady here, but I could see where you would get Piggy out of Vicky if you ever seen her.
Joshua Perry.
I'm not trying to be shady, but
I'm sorry, Vicky, but I don't think Vicky's on there anymore, right?
What's your
Vicky is off the deep end.
If we're going to give Brooke a pitch on why she should watch Real Housewives again, she should give it another try.
Okay.
What's your pitch?
Go from season 1, watch Housewives of Atlanta. You're from Atlanta, so this is all familiar to you.
Okay.
NeNe Leakes is a superstar. She's been a star since the day we saw her on TV. I wish we could see more of her. She and Andy and Bravo fell out. It's so sad that happened. They also have one of my favorite artists, songwriters, Kandi Burruss, on there. She wrote No Scrubs. Love me some Kandi. She spun off, had her own thing going as well. Kim Zolciak, which watch Don't Be Tardy as well. She is a mess. I get push notifications from TMZ, and she's on there all the time. I do.
Stop.
I do.
You get push notifications from TMZ.
Brooke, you know me.
But I didn't think that you had push notifications.
I gotta stay up, and I usually turn push notifications off. I gotta stay up on all of the hot gossip. Let me go through right now.
What's the last thing TMZ just notified you of?
That's a great question. I think I cleared it. I had 99 notifications from them. No, I didn't. Blake Lively posts heartfelt tribute to the Michelle young lady who passed away.
Michelle Trachtenberg. I was really sad about that.
52 notifications from TMZ, push notifications. I'm on top of this. But Kim Zolciak, she was on there. She was an absolute train wreck, a mess. Phaedra Parks, the Southern attorney, and she ends up being an absolute lunatic. And this is where the crossover is great. You can go watch that, and then you can watch Phaedra on Traitors. And she was one of my favorite people on that show. Brooke, you need to get into this.
Will it make me feel better about myself that I
100%.
have my life somewhat together, and then
this is why I don't participate in drama in my personal life, is because I live vicariously through theirs.
I will say we're going a little off topic here, but you love reality TV like Real Housewives, but you also like TLC shows, and there's some weird shows on TLC.
Yes, I do, unfortunately. So My 600-Pound Life is one that I've watched. This one is not a TLC, but I've watched so many episodes of Intervention because my wife loves watching that show for some reason. And then my wife and my mom which my mom hangs out all the time with her grandbaby James. So they end up watching shows together. Baylin, who got TikTok famous, she's got a show. The young lady who has Tourette's, she's got a show on TLC now, and they're addicted to that show.
She's engaged, right?
Yes, she is.
Good for her.
Mhm.
Wait, Joshua, I always say, you should do a crossover. Obviously, sports is your thing, but you could definitely like host a show like Michael Strahan, like I think, because how he did the crossover thing, I think you could do that. If you could host any show or any type of reality show, what show would it be?
It's a good question. So I've actually thought a little bit about this. The other thing that I have not uncovered to y'all yet that I love is game shows. I watch Game Show Network. When I can't sleep 2 a.m., I'm watching game shows. And so I think hosting a game show would be a ton of fun. But like, get me to be one of those people who does like one of the trash VH1 reality type situations. Let me host a reunion, something to that effect. I think that's where I would fit into the landscape.
You would crush it.
Great. Yeah, I think
It'd be
that would
fun.
be great. I'll tell you, as a kid, I was told to stop watching Game Show Network and to start watching something with a plot. So I do understand the affinity for a game show. But I think Andy Cohen is the best job on the planet. And whenever he's
Agreed.
ready to hand that away, I don't know how we get Bravo to call me, but maybe we can do a duo situation here because I'm locked in.
I got the connect to Bravo. So we can make
From
that happen.
your mouth to God's ears, Joshua.
All right. He's got the
Make it
connect.
happen.
He knows the guy.
I could weasel some things.
Okay.
See, this is why we wanted to have you on, because you're so well-rounded. You're so much fun. And obviously you're one of Brooke and I's best friends. So we just appreciate you hopping on here and letting us share your personality with the world, because it's so entertaining. And we didn't even get into the fact that you also are such a nerd when it comes to finance. Maybe you'll have to come on another time and we can just pick your brain about how we should fix our shopping habits.
Real quick. I don't think anybody needs to necessarily fix anything. You just make a budget. A budget is permission to spend money. Just remember it that way and you'll feel good about it. I actually, one of my goals for this year is to get my my CFP certification. I want to become a certified financial planner. I have no plan at all to actually use it in a business sense. I just enjoy it. So that's been on my board of things to do.
Danny, Joshua, when we got hired on the same show, he helped me set up my
401k,
my insurance. And here's the thing. I only knew Joshua for 2 days, but after hearing him talk about his money, I was like, you know what you're talking about. I know I can trust you.
I'm like, Brooke, this is what you need to do. I'm like, these are the funds that you need to get invested in. Just set it and forget it. Don't look at it.
People watching, don't always put your trust and tell people your finances. Joshua is just a very trustworthy person. No,
thank you.
Anomaly. Yeah. How's James doing real quick before we let you go?
Kid is great. He is big and just full of energy. He's fun. He does weird things. He enjoys weird things. He loves music and like things that are rhythmic. And so he'll make me, and I'm saying this as an 11-month-old making somebody do something. He'll make me beatbox and he'll like giggle and clap and laugh. And then he'll try to do it too, which is the most beautiful thing. So it's been awesome. It's like this weird journey that you never could imagine, but it's 11 months in. It's been great.
Oh, so sweet. Well, I think Brooke and I have both seen you do karaoke before. So I'm not going to lie, you can actually sing, which is pretty impressive. So maybe this kid is going to have some pipes on him as well.
We got some musicians in the family. My older brother is very musically gifted. So he's got multiple paths he can take in the world.
Well, you're very gifted, Joshua. We appreciate you hopping on. Please tell both Maddie, your wife, and your lovely baby James hi for us and give them a hug, okay?
We will. All right. Thank you.
Okay, we always love catching up with our guy, JP, hearing about everything that's going on in his life. And of course, Maddie and James. Oh, he's so cute. Anyways, but this was such a fun show. Dani K, until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.
Bye.